Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and immersion and increasing immersion by focusing on how a fighter processes pain. All right. Okay, so basically what I want to talk about today is increasing the immersion in your tabletop role-playing game as a dungeon master. So this is really critical for us to do as dungeon masters, is to increase the immersion of our players, to help them feel like they are seeing the world that we are presenting to them, this imaginary world, in as high detail as possible, and specifically in details that are beautiful, that are compelling, that are exciting, that are sorrowful, that bring out emotion and help us to see with more intensity and to feel with more intensity than we might feel in our regular mundane lives, right? And the reason why I'm coming to you and talking to you about this today is I've been, I saw something specifically on YouTube that dealt with a Japanese person that really helped me understand how people process pain, how different cultures process pain, and how we have an opportunity as dungeon masters to deepen the immersion of our games if we are focusing on specifically how a fighter processes pain. And so this content is specific for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This content is specific for the fighter class, right? This works best with the fighter class. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so I'm a huge fan I've become a really big fan of YouTube BMX. So this is YouTube, watching YouTubers from all over the world who are BMX riders, world-class BMX riders from all over the world, riding BMX bikes and doing all kinds of BMX tricks on unique and special locations all over the world. So over the last probably 6 to 9 months, I've gotten pretty deep into Scotty Kramer. Scotty Kramer has a channel. He has multiple world-class BMX riders on that channel. He is American, and so I've seen just dozens and dozens of these rides where riders are riding their BMX bikes and doing these world-class tricks in America, okay? Well, I watch this American BMX content on YouTube, and I also watch anime on YouTube, right? And YouTube, the algorithm was so smart, it was like, you know what? I think Scott would like to watch Japanese BMXers, right? So it started feeding me Japanese BMXers in my feed, and unfortunately, I was like, I didn't watch it right away. I'm like, I don't even understand what they're saying. I clicked on one, and I could not understand what they were saying. They were speaking in Japanese, and I'm like, I'm not watching this, right? Because I struggle when something is not in my native language, right? But I circled back later, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this a shot, right? So I am currently watching a lot of videos by a world-class BMX rider. He focuses on essentially like field riding and skill riding. He does a lot of this hopping on one tire and a lot of precision riding. But the gentleman's name is actually, I would probably say he's like between 20 and 25 years old. And he is just an absolute world-class rider. His name is Tomomi Nishikubo. Okay, so I was watching this video with Tomomi Nishikubo, and he is doing exactly what Scotty Kramer is doing, right? So he is taking himself and other world-class BMX riders. They are now in America. The way Scotty does it is Scotty and his crew, which is riders and maybe, and actually usually the riders will do the shooting as well. So the riders will ride and they'll be on camera, and then they'll take turns, and another rider will ride, and then that other rider will then use the camera, right? And the way they do this is they just pack up, and this is the way they do it in America. They pack up a pickup truck full of bikes, full of cameras. And they go out and they go to a skate park, or they go to an actual park, or they go anywhere where there's a structure that they can ride their BMX bikes on, and they shoot, right? And that's it, right? And they do this very, very frequently, right? Because they're trying to create content quickly, right? And the reason why they're trying to create content quickly is They have online communities, and online communities are beasts, right? And you got to feed them. Well, what do you feed them? You feed them content, right? And so basically, they're shooting as much video as they can quickly, and then they're editing, and they're cutting it up, and they're putting it up, right? Well, one of the things that's also really unique is in the old days, back in the 80s and 90s, they would just cut and give you the best, coolest parts. But nowadays, you get to see the between parts. You get to see the fails. You get to see them just drinking water between takes, right? Excuse me. And you get to see them doing all kinds of, different things that are happening, right? When they're out shooting, right? Now, that's the way they do it in America. They do it exactly the same in Japan. Exactly the same in Japan with the following changes. Of course, the locations are different. In America, they're shooting American locations. In Japan, they're shooting Japanese locations. But what's different is they don't, in Japan, they use these vans, these small vans. They pack these small vans with their bikes and with their camera rather than a pickup truck. It's virtually the only difference, right? So I'm watching YouTube, and I'm watching this guy, Tomomi Nishikubo, and he is being shot by another BMX rider, world-class BMX rider, who has gone out with him, right? That guy's using his camera to shoot him with the camera, right? So Tomomi Nishikubo does this approach trick where he is riding his bike at speed at a low stone area, and what he does is he comes forward, and then he kind of goes into a swift turn where he's using the friction of the back tire. He's kind of going into a skid, and he's going to hop up onto this one, like almost like a dais, right? And he's going to do a quick turn, right? And it's like a 270 tap, right? There's like a cool name for it, right? Well, he comes in, he's coming in at speed. Tomomi is coming in at speed, and he comes in, and he jumps up onto the little dais, and he jumps off the bike, and he goes, yeah, right? And he makes this noise, right? And you're like, is he laughing, right? And he jumps off the bike falls on the ground. He is standing, right? Now, I watch a lot of these things, and I know what they're doing. Generally, I know what tricks they're doing, and I'm like, something went wrong here. Well, sure enough, something did go wrong, and he has this big grin on his face, right? But the cameraman comes in to see what happened, and you realize it's not a grin. It is a rictus of pain, right? And he's in a lot of pain, and the cameraman then immediately points the camera down at his right shin, and his right shin has no less than 4 to 6 severe lacerations, like significant, I shouldn't say severe, significant lacerations. He has taken his shin and it has touched the running gears of his bike, okay? The rotating gears of his bike, and his bike has turned his shin into beefaroni, right? And there's blood, and there's flesh, and there's just shreds of human flesh on his shin, right? And then Tomomi sees the cameraman has already shot his face, has already shot his wound, and then he laughs, and he's like, ha ha ha, right? And then he quickly puts his hands on his face, okay? And he's wearing black gloves, which a lot of the riders wear. I wear black gloves too when I ride. And he's covering his face with his hands, and it sounds like he's laughing, but then the cameraman realizes he is not laughing, right? That he was trying to put on a smile and a laugh for the cameras, but he's in deep pain. He's in deep pain, right? So the cameraman does something that I have never, ever seen on any American BMX show. It showed the difference between Tomomi Nishikubo's cameraman and the cameraman they use for Scotty Kramer's team, right? He showed the difference between Japanese culture and American culture, and it was a special moment of humanity, which I thank the Lord I watched YouTube the way I do, because this was really unique and special, and it belongs in our Dungeons & Dragons game. We could recreate this special moment in our Dungeons & Dragons game. Here's what Tomomi Nishikubo's cameraman did, okay? What he did was, he said, he realizes that Tomomi is actually crying out in pain, and there are probably tears on his face, which we can't see because he has his face covered with his gloves, but he's in a moment of true human pain, right? And the cameraman realizes this ain't a time to continue to shoot, right? And the cameraman does something I will never forget in my life. He turns around, he turns the camera away from Tomomi, and he says, a beautiful lake, a beautiful lake. He turns around and he just says 3 words, a beautiful lake. And he looks at the lake that is behind them. And it is daytime, and there is sun sparkling off of this beautiful lake that is in this Japanese city behind where they're shooting this BMX ride, right? And I swear, I was just so struck as a fellow human being at the difference in Japanese culture and the difference in American culture, okay? I will tell you right now, I don't think for 1 second Scotty Kramer's cameramen would have turned away. They would have captured all of it, right? They would have captured every moment of that pain, right? And that would have been up on YouTube. And we see that often on Scotty Kramer. They show you the good and they show you the bad. They show you some of the hardest hits that those riders take. They show you the pain it takes to get these huge tricks, right? And I was like, I was really stunned, right? And actually, it was like the cameraman, Tomomi Nishikubo's Kubo's cameraman wasn't turning away from showing gore or showing pain. He was turning away from showing a time where Tomomi might be dishonored by his own reaction to pain, or when he was being shown in a moment of weakness, or when he was being shown in a moment where Tomomi rides like a hero, and I just don't think Tomomi would have wanted to be seen in that moment, right? And I was just so struck that Tomomi Nishikubo's cameraman turned away and he just said, a beautiful lake. And there's like 2 minutes of shot where you see the lake, and you even hear a little bit, like this cry of pain behind him from Tomomi, but the cameraman just shoots the lake, right? Instead of showing that time where maybe tears are falling down, the face of Tomomi Nishikubo, not because he's weak, but because he's human, and he was genuinely hurt, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, we need this in our Dungeons & Dragons games. We need to show how different groups process pain and what happens with our player characters. And I thought also, shame on us as players, shame on us as dungeon masters for so often ignoring the pain that our player characters are experiencing, right? And not showing that in some depth and not processing that as human beings, right? And also realizing that, Scotty Kramer's cameraman is going to process that in a different way than Tomomi Nishikubo's cameraman is going to process that. And I thought, wow, now in a Dungeons & Dragons, so that's the moment. It was beautiful. I feel fortunate to have even witnessed this. This was really special to me. And I was like, this tells me more about being a human being and how our cultures process things differently, right? So how do we bring this into our Dungeons & Dragons games? Well, one, we need to focus on the fighter. The fighter is on the front lines. The fighter is going to be the one that gets shredded, right? And so what I would do to bring this into a Dungeons & Dragons game is the next time you have a round where your fighter comes out the other side with half or 3/4 of their hit points gone, have them make a Constitution check after the fight is done. This is very critical. After the fight is done, and if they fail that Constitution, say, listen, you are actually in a ton of pain from your wounds, and your player character fighter has begun to cry, right? And they realize, your player character fighter realizes there are tears coming down your face. What do you do, right? Does your play, and then shut up. Just say, what do you do, right? And shut up. Don't give them options, right? Let the player, use your silence. Use your silence, right? So don't say a thing, right? And then let your player, and they might go, what? Are you telling me I need to tell you what I do because my fighter is crying? And you can answer that question if they do. But they might go, I don't want the other player characters to see my tears coming down my face, right? And they go, I'm going to go sit over on a rock and I'm going to put my back to the rest of the group, right? And then you say to the player character groups, you've never seen this before. Your fighter, has moved over and is just sitting on a rock and is being quiet, right? And the other players, and they might miss it. The player might go, well, I'm going to go over and heal him, right? And you could even tell him then, when you get close, you see that his shoulders are sobbing, and you think you hear whimpers, and see how do the player characters process that the other player characters, other than the fighters, the other player characters in that force, in that party of adventurers. They are the cameramen, okay? They are the cameramen, right? And they are going to witness this fighter's tears. How do they process this? Does the cleric go, you know what, I'm not going to heal him right now. I'm going to give him 5 minutes. I'm going to go back over and make sure that the saddles are tight on the horses, right? Or does the cleric sit down and put their arm around the fighter, right? We don't know. We don't know how the player character who runs the fighter is going to react to having to process the pain of their, we don't know how the player is going to react to having to process the pain of their player character fighter. We don't know how the player characters are going to react to seeing their fighter weeping, right? This is not, there's not going to be any more HP lost, right? This has nothing to do with treasure, right? But does it advance the story? I don't think it actually advances the story on the Dungeons and Dragons world. It advances the story in our world, right? It forces us to look at how we as human beings process pain, the pain of others, right? And so, so I just wanted to bring this to you. Really, take a moment, process the pain of your player character fighter class, right? As a dungeon master, dig into this. See what the player who plays the fighter does with it. See what the player characters do as well, right? And if you have a group that that can't process this scene, that doesn't know what to do with this, get them there, get them on your level, right? Make them better human beings, right? And so use this as an opportunity to say, we are trying to make our player characters better and giving them more experience and giving them more equipment, right? But we as players are human beings, and we can equip ourselves with emotional depth, right? And that, so not only are we equipping our player characters, but we can equip ourselves as human beings with emotional depth, right? It's important, right? And I really was just blown away by this special moment of seeing how the cameraman of Tomomi Nishikubo processed the pain of Tomomi Nishikubo. And I think, that special moment belongs in our Dungeons & Dragons game. When we see something transcendent in our world, we need to bring it into our Dungeons & Dragons world so that we can deeper the immersion of those worlds. I want to thank you very much for exploring life with me and for exploring Dungeons & Dragons with me. I say this all the time, and I'll never stop saying it. I appreciate everybody out there who listens to these videos and who takes the time to comment on them. It really means a ton to me. It's one of the most special things in my life. I'm so blessed, and this is one large part of that blessing. And I know this is askew content, right? It is Dungeons & Dragons at an angle that a lot of other people aren't talking about. And the fact that there are hundreds of people who come in and view this kind of content is just really inspiring and encouraging to me. And I want to thank every single viewer out there. You guys are precious to me. I really appreciate it, especially when you come in and you add feedback as well. But I really appreciate every view as well. And I just want to thank you for having this special thing that I'm able to do. And I can't tell you how much this touched me, just seeing how that cameraman of Tomomi Nishikubo processed his pain and dealt with him as a human being. And I'm encouraging you to take this into your Dungeons & Dragons games. Thank you very much. Please consider liking and subscribing. Take care.